الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ووفقنا للعمل به. We have quite a lot to get through today. We're quite behind. So we reached the ayah of lowering, or the ayah, the two ayahs of lowering the gaze in Surah An-Noor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولشيخنا وللمستمعين ولجميع المسلمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قال الله تعالى: قل للمؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لهم إن الله خبير بما يصنعون. Tell the believing men to reduce some of their vision and guard their private parts. That is purer for them. Indeed, Allah is fully aware of what they do.
Now, I think lower their gaze makes more sense than lower the vision, because lower the vision doesn't really, in English, doesn't really make sense to people. And you let them lower their gaze, and you not look at everything, and don't let your eyes look at everything. And you be someone who lowers your gaze, khasatan, especially when it comes to the there being a woman who is imra'atun ajnabiyya, a woman who you are not a mahram for her. So lower your gaze from her. Don't look at her directly. And this, wallahi, is a very, very important. And it relates to the issue of zina al-ayn, the zina of the eye. The Prophet ﷺ called it that. وَزِنَا الْعَيْنِ النَّظَرِ. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the zina of the eye is looking at something. For the person lowers their gaze. They don't look at a woman who is ajnabiyya directly. And this is a very tricky thing to do, to be honest, and especially in our time where you have to avoid the handshakes, you have to then avoid looking at the person. And people find it very difficult. Like, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, and the Muslims don't have a choice when Allah reveals something except to submit to it. So you don't look directly at the person. And that is whether or not she is covered, it doesn't make any difference. In fact, if she's not covered, it is more emphatic than if she's covered. Like, and if she's covered, the ayah came down with regard to that. And if the woman is covered, you lower your gaze. So how about if she's not covered? And from this is lowering the gaze in a specific situation and a general situation. A specific situation, a specific woman. And it's in front of you, someone is talking to you. And in a general situation, generally speaking, when you are in the street, when you're going down the road, don't be someone who is looking at everything. If your eye falls upon something and it's not your fault, and you're not going to an extreme, but your eye falls and maybe you stop at a crossing and a woman walks across the crossing and she's not properly dressed, for example, and you didn't realize and you didn't have time to lower your gaze. For here comes the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, الْأُولَى لَكْ وَالثَّانِيَ عَلَيْكَ. The first one is not your fault, and the second one you're sinful for. You're sinful if you keep your gaze there, or if you bring it back again. But you're not sinful if something walks across your vision without you meaning it, and you're just walking down the road normally and someone walks across your vision. So you're not sinful the first time. You lower your gaze. That's what's required of you. Because zina al-ayn leads to zina al-yad and zina al-rijl, and then it leads to wal-farju yusaddiqu dhalika aw yukadhibu. After that, it leads to the zina of the hand, the zina of the foot, and ultimately it leads a person into what is worse. And this is from the point of sadd al-dhara'i, stopping the means that lead to something.
وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا لبعولتهن أو آبائهن بعولتهن أو أبنائهن أو أبناء بعولتهن أو إخوانهن أو بني إخوانهن أو بني أخواتهن أو نسائهن أو ما ملكت أيمانهن أو التابعين غير أولي الإربة من الرجال أو الطفل الذين لم يظهروا على عورات النساء ولا يضربن بأرجلهن
عفوا. Be careful not to make qalqala on the dot, huh?
ولا يضربن بأرجلهن ليعلم ما يخفين من زينتهن وتوبوا إلى الله جميعا أيها المؤمنون لعلكم تفلحون. And tell the believing women to reduce some of their vision and guard their private parts and not expose their adornment, except that which necessarily appears thereof, and to wrap a portion of their head covers over their chests, and not to expose their adornment, except to their husbands, their fathers, their husbands' fathers, their sons, their husbands' sons, their brothers' sons, their sisters' sons, their women, that which their right hands possess, or those male attendants having no physical desire, or children who are not aware of the private aspect of women, and let them not stamp their feet to make known what they conceal of their adornment, and to turn to Allah in repentance, all of you, O believers, that you might succeed.
Naam. So first of all, the believing women are told the same as the believing men, to reduce, to lower your gaze. And when you go out, when you speak to someone of the opposite gender, so don't stare into their eyes, don't look at them, but lower your gaze. And the idea of lowering it is not to close your eyes, right? But just to divert your gaze away from that person. And to guide the private parts, again, so this ruling is the same for men and it's the same for women. And generally, the general ruling in the Qur'an is إنما الأخوات the إنما النساء نعم. The Prophet ﷺ said إنما النساء شقائق الرجال. Women are the full sisters of men. Women are the full sisters of men. So the rulings apply to the same, but here the emphasis is that not only is this for the believing men, but it's also for the believing women. And the most important thing in this is that there is no fitna. In a situation where there is no fitna, you can say that there could be a certain amount of leniency. There could be a certain amount of leniency when it comes to a situation where there is, it is not a situation of fitna. And I don't say leniency, I don't say to change the ruling. The ruling doesn't change. The ruling doesn't change. It becomes even more severe in a situation of fitna. And not to expose their adornment. Not to expose their adornment. So the adornment, it covers two things. It covers the natural beauty of a woman's body. So that includes the body, that includes the hair, the natural beauty. And that is zinatuha, that's what makes her beautiful. The shape of the body, the hair, and so on. And also adornment can refer to jewelry. For some of the ulama, they brought this as an evidence for, as we're going to hear later, what is a woman allowed to wear in front of her mahram. And they took the second meaning. And let them wrap a portion of their head covers over their chests. And this is important. Yani from the hijab, that the hijab should descend over the chest. And that means that it should cover the shoulders and the chest from the hijab. In here, the word hijab is actually, it's the wrong word to use. The right word to use here is khimar. That's what the ayah uses. Because the word hijab is a partition. And in other words, everything that a woman covers herself with is a hijab. Her jilbab is a hijab. Her khimar is a hijab. If she goes behind a partition, it's a hijab. If she goes into the sister section, it's a hijab. And all of that is a hijab. Like what we use in English is we use the word hijab for what we use in Arabic, khimar. That is the khimar, يعني ما يخمر الرأس, يعني what covers the head, what is wrapped around the head. So what is wrapped around the head, what we call a hijab, is actually called in Arabic a khimar. So they're told to take your khimar and make sure that it reaches below the chest, over the chest. So it will cover the shape of the body from the top, and it will cover also, and it will help to cover also the shape of the chest as well. So it will cover the shoulders and it will cover the shape of the chest from the khimar, and from that which comes over the top. But there's different ways that people do that, to have a big one, or to have one that drapes over, or to have the jilbab that people wear from on top of their head, or to have like a half piece that goes from the head over the chest. Again, this is what the ayah commands. That from the head, the khimar should go over, and from the head, it should go down up until below the chest. And do not expose their adornment. Here, the adornment, it can be both types. Here. يعني بعض أهل العلم استدلوا بهذا. It's very strong istidlal. The question is, what can a woman wear in front of her mahram? طيب, the first one we have to separate is who? Who do we have to take aside? Who do we have to take aside? For the woman, what she wears. We told about that, what she wears in front of the non-mahram, she's covered from head to toe. That's the mafhum al-ayah. And I believe very, very strongly that this is the hukum. There is no exception for the face or the hands or the feet. Rather, she has to be covered from the top of her head to the tip of her toe. And this is what the ayat came with. It's what the language of the ayat is used for the language. And it's what the sahabiyat did. And anyone who brought a dalil other than that, they brought adilla muhtamala. They brought like a woman, for example, she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ turned his nephew, Al-Fadl, he turned his head away. So they said this shows her face was uncovered. Like, it's a dalil. That's not a dalil. Afwan, it's not a dalil. That's just a ihtimal. إذا ظهر الاحتمال بطل الاستدلال. The Khath'amiyya who came to the Prophet ﷺ. There's many ihtimalat kathira. The wind blew and her niqab came off. She's on Hajj, so she wasn't wearing a niqab. She was in ihram, so she wasn't wearing a niqab. Or that she was known for her beauty, and the Prophet ﷺ, out of caution, turned his nephew's head. It's not a dalil. That's a very, very weak dalil. Because it has ihtimalat kathira. There's many ihtimalat in it. There's many, many different possibilities in it. When the principle we brought, إذا ظهر الاحتمال بطل الاستدلال. If you have a dalil that could be used in different ways, you can't use it as a dalil for one thing out of those different ways. فعلى كل حال, the مسألة is khilafiyya بين أهل العلم, no doubt, and we respect fully the people of knowledge who took that view that the woman can uncover her face and hands. Lakin it's not the correct view. Rather, the correct view is that she has to be covered from the top of her head to the tip of her toes. and there is nothing accepted from it except for one eye or two eyes to see the way. And this is what the Sahaba were upon unanimously. And it's not true to say this was only for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa radiyallahu anhum. But this is what the Sahabiyat, all of them did. To me, I don't see, and there's an answer about it. If you go to the AMAU, there's a video on AMAU about it. Sheikh Abdul Rahman, he discussed the issue of the niqab. I'm sure there's a podcast about it. But in any case, we understood what a woman has to wear in front of al-ajnabi, the man who's not a mahram to her. So she has to cover from the top of her head to the tip of her toes. There is no exception, not the hands, not the feet. The only exception is the haja, the need she has to have her eyes uncovered. In kanat, yani hunaka haja, if she needs it, that she needs to have her eyes uncovered as a haja. As for what some of the women do, wallahu al-musta'an, that they decorate their eyes when they wear the niqab, wallahu al-musta'an. And they put the mascara, this type of stuff on their eyeliner and all this stuff on their eyes when they wear the niqab. Allahu musta'an. What's the benefit of the niqab then? And the hijab, the whole point of the hijab, from the beginning to the end, is to stop people looking at you. For wallahi, one of the saddest things, and it hurts so much, it's so painful, wallahi, is to see there's so many women on YouTube, on whatever these, I say YouTube is, and he died a long time ago. It's what, and for this type of things, whatever it is, TikTok and Instagram and all that, showing the women how to wear a hijab so you can look beautiful in the hijab. Look beautiful in the hijab. يعني ما لكم كيف تحكمون. Did you not understand the point of the hijab is not to look beautiful? This ayah is a dalil that the point of the hijab is not to look beautiful. A hijab tutorial in how to look good in a hijab, it goes against من نواقض هذا الأصل. يعني it goes against the concept of the hijab. Hijab plus makeup, عجيب. Hijab plus makeup. Hijab, makeup. That's two opposites. The hijab is there to hide the beauty in every single way. And the hijab is there to hide the beauty in every single way possible. Hatta, so the sisters don't misunderstand me. I want you to understand. So the sisters don't misunderstand me. I want you to understand. Even if you uncover your face and hands, you take that view. And it's a view among the people of knowledge, no doubt. And you take that view. That does not allow you to wear makeup. And if you take that view that you're allowed to uncover your face and hands, that doesn't allow you to wear makeup. Wallahi, it doesn't. That's opposite. The hijab is there to stop people looking at you. It's to make ghadd al-basar, is to make people lower their gaze. For beautiful hijab, and it's like saying beautiful hellfire. The two of them don't go together. How can you bring those two together? They don't go together. They're not, the hijab is there to take away your beauty. It's there to stop people looking at you. It's not there to make you more beautiful. For wallahi, some of them, لَرُبَّمَا كَانَتْ, wallahi, perhaps she would be more beautiful when she wears the hijab than when she doesn't. She makes more of the effort. And then she puts her hijab and she puts a bright one and all this design on it, and then she puts her makeup, and then she puts all of that on top. فقد تكون أجمل وهي متحجبة. And she might be more beautiful in a state of hijab. That's against the concept. Those two things don't go together. For if we said those who took the view that she can show her face and hands, anyway, she's going to show her face and hands in ihram and so on. That's from the dalil they brought. They said, look, in ihram she's allowed to show her face and hands. وهذا لا شك. In ihram she shows her face and hands. Like, what did the sahabiyat used to do in ihram? If a man came, they would cover their face. In ihram. For the dalil they brought is, they said in ihram she doesn't have to cover her face and hands, so it shows it's not part of the hijab. And it's not an obligatory part of the hijab. Like, it is, because when the men come, she covers her face with the hijab. Anyway, ala kulli hal. The mas'ala is big, and we're not discounting the views of the great scholars of Islam who held the view that a woman can show her face and hands. Like, she cannot adorn it. Tayyib, that's a question. Now, who do we have to take out of the equation? When we talk about the next category of people, who do we have to take out? The husband. Why? Because there's no aura. Between the husband and wife, there's no aura. Meaning there is nothing that a husband cannot see from his wife, and there is nothing that a wife cannot see from her husband. There's no aura between them. And from the khata, the big mistakes people make, is to apply that rule to, for example, kids, to, for example, the women in front of other women. Some women in front of other women, Allahul Musta'an. It's particularly common in the Middle East. It's less common in Southeast Asia. People are a bit more, this issue of like covering. Like, in subhanAllah, so in the Middle East, sometimes women in front of other women, they wear what women don't wear in front of their husband. ممكن متنقبة, she wears niqab and everything. Like, in front of other women, like at a wedding or something like that, she doesn't limit what she wears. She doesn't limit what she shows. For that's something, wallahi, it's not correct. And likewise, so we say the husband is on his own. Why is the husband on his own? Because there's no aura. So there's no limit to what she wears in front of her husband, and there's no limit to what the husband wears in front of her. For that is the aura between the spouses, it doesn't apply. Having said that, that doesn't mean that we take away hayat. That doesn't mean we're taking away shyness and modesty in general. Inna Allaha awla an yustahiya min. Allah is more deserving that you have shyness of Him. For there's no doubt that the issue of shyness in the hijab, or in the clothing people wear, and you don't walk around the house without clothes on, hatta if it's only the husband and wife. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, Inna Allaha awla an yustahiya min. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more deserving that you have shame in front of Him. For a person is generally dressed, like in a technical sense, there is no aura between the husband and the wife. There remains a category, the mahram. Other than the husband and the women, the women who are, when he said, the ayah mentions, the ayah mentions nisa'ihin. Here, some of the ulama took a view that nisa'ihinna means Muslim women. Some of them took the view that in front of the kafirah, she has to wear full hijab. Why do you think they said in front of the kafirah she has to wear full hijab? Because the kafirah doesn't fear Allah Azza wa Jal, and may spread how she looks, tell about her beauty, tell about how her hair is, describe her figure to the men. Because the kafirah, in the first place, if she doesn't believe in Allah, so she doesn't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala any mutlaq. Like, in the ruling with regard to the kafirah is, it's still included in it. She's still allowed to uncover, but she has to be confident about the kafirah that she's not going to spread how she looks. And if she fears that the kafirah is going to take a picture or is going to spread how she looks, then she should keep her hijab and abaya and everything like that. Like, what's left? The Muslim women or the reliable women and the mahram other than the husband. So what can she wear? Here the ulama went to the meaning of zina. So what did they say is zina? They said zina is what makes a woman beautiful. Sah? Like her body shape, her hair. This is the zina. This is the zina, and it's what makes her beautiful. And where she would normally wear jewelry, so that which is apparent from it. Because it said, إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ minha. So they took from this that the ruling of the woman in front of her mahram, who is not her husband, is where the jewelry would normally show. So for example, where would a woman normally wear jewelry? Ala sabil mithal. On her neck. Naam. On her wrists. Maybe her ankles. Naam. For she can show below the knee. She can't show above the knee, because the knee, the awra, for the men and women in that sense, is the most important part of the awra is from the navel to the knee. That's the most important part of the awra, right? From the belly button to the knee. So in terms of the knee, she can, below the knee, she can show. She can show her arms, where she might normally wear jewelry. She can show her hair. She can show her neckline, where she would normally wear a necklace. In her ears, she would normally wear jewelry. In these, she can show where she would normally wear an adornment. That's in front of her children, like her sons or daughters, in front of the other women, in front of for example, her brother. So let's go through the relatives that are mentioned here. The husband is the exception to the rule, because the husband, there is no awra. And her father. So her father is a mahram to her. Same rules apply, the neckline, the hair, the فمن العجيب also, and you find it strange, is that we're in the culture where the woman has to wear like a hijab in front of her husband. That's also very strange. The husband's father. The husband's father. So that is the husband's father. Her son and her husband's sons. So the sons of her husband. Any husband might have other wives or might have been married before. So he has other sons. The husband's sons. Her brother. Her brother's sons. That is her nephews that are blood nephews. Her brother's sons. And sister's sons. So that is both the nephews, whether it's her sister's children or her brother's children. Their women, we said they differed about whether the women here refers to Muslim women only or whether it refers to women in general. But what I believe to be the better view is that it's okay for her to uncover in front of the disbelieving woman, but only if she knows that woman is not going to expose her or speak about her to other people. That which their right hands possess, any slaves. For here, the slave, she can wear a light hijab in front of the slave, because the slave is the one that is the male slave that she has, the male slave. She can lighten her hijab. I'll read you what As-Sa'di says about it. He says the condition of the slave is that it's only while she owns the slave, the male slave, and that she owns the male slave completely. If it's part ownership where she owns half, she can't. And she has to own the male slave completely. And he can also look at her with a minimal hijab, and without the whole, and without the covering of the face and the hands and all of those, and without the full conditions of it. She still has to be modestly dressed. Or the men that have no desire for women. As-Sa'di says, like the man who has reduced mental capacity, for example. A man who has reduced mental capacity. For example, you could have an older man, like he doesn't have miskeen, he doesn't know what he's doing, and he doesn't really, he doesn't have a desire for women. He's like a child mentally. He's like a little child. This can be included in it. The one who is very old, who doesn't have any desire, not in his any private parts, nor in his heart, as Sa'di said. The one who he doesn't have anything left, any physically, nor in his heart. Or the child or children that are younger than the age of tamyiz. Now here, this is very important, and this is a huge, huge problem. Allah Azza wa Jal allowed the child that is duna sinna tamyiz, younger than the age of discernment, to look at a woman who is not a mahram to them. Now, what is the age of discernment? Certainly by 7 years old, everyone has reached the age of discernment, but many people 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. The one who is so childlike and innocent that they don't have an understanding of what the aura of a woman is. Now, that's what the ayah says, right? Who are not yet aware of the private parts of the woman. That means a child who is what? 5 years old, 6 years old. Wallahi, we see today that women allow children 12 years old, 13 years old into the sister section. And the women don't cover in front of them. Any child who is over the age of tamyiz, you have to cover in front of them. Sometimes your cousin, your nephew or whatever, not nephews are mahram, like in the family, like cousins, for example, little cousins come in. The woman doesn't put hijab. She's like, oh, they're little, he's only 10. La wallah, finish. The hijab is allowed to not wear the hijab in front of a child who doesn't know what a woman's body is. That's what the ayah says. Meaning the child is doing sinna tamyiz. He doesn't know what's going on. 5 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old. Like, as for a child who's 10 years old, la wallahi, it's not allowed for him. She has to cover in front of him like she has to cover in front of al-rajul al-ajnabi. And let them not stamp their feet to make known. They used to wear like bangles on their feet. And they would, people would, the immoral women and so on, or it was a custom at that time, they would tap their feet, tap their ankles to make their bangles make a noise. And he saw that the people would, the men would be attracted and so on. Because this becomes like a wasila, a means to haram. And beg Allah to forgive you, all of you, believers, so that you may be successful.
وأنكحوا الأيام منكم والصالحين من عبادكم وإمائكم إن يكونوا فقراء يغنهم الله من فضله والله واسع عليم. And marry the unmarried among you, and the righteous among your male slaves and female slaves. If they should be poor, Allah will enrich them from His bounty, and Allah is all-encompassing and knowing.
From the slaves, the singles among the men and women, let them marry one another, marry them to each other. Those who are not married among you, and the righteous among the male and female slaves, the ones who are righteous, let them marry. And if they are poor, Allah Azza wa Jalla will enrich them. Just a moment, we'll see. And Sa'di said the righteous here, he said, يحتمل المراد بالصالحين صلاح الدين. And righteous in the religion, a person who's not a zaniya or a zani. Because remember, the zina was common among slaves, but it was not common among free people. In reality, it wasn't. It wasn't common among free people. It was common among slaves. So if they're not, they're righteous people. No. And he said this is supported by the fact. He said, and it may be that the meaning of a salihin is that they are ready for marriage and in need of it. And so the word righteous is a choice. They chose the word righteous, meaning righteous in the righteous. Muhsin Khan does a better job because Muhsin Khan gives both meanings. It says either the ones who are pious or the ones who are ready, and fit and capable. For these are two meanings in the ayah. One meaning is that they are righteous, and he marry those that are not committing zina, and he let them marry, or let them marry those who are in need of it, and those slaves, the male and female slaves who are in need, they want to marry, let them, allow them to marry. And in it is the evidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich the person who wants to marry from the sincerity of their heart, and the one who genuinely wants to marry, even if they're financially in a difficult situation, Allah Azza wa Jal will enrich them.
وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا وآتوهم مما لله الذي آتاكم ولا تكرهوا فتياتكم على البغاء إن أردنا تحصنا لتبتغوا عرض الحياة الدنيا ومن يكرههن فإن الله من بعد إكراههن غفور رحيم. But let them who find not the means for marriage abstain from sexual relations until Allah enriches them from His bounty. And those who seek a contract for eventual emancipation from among whom your right hands possess, then make a contract with them. If you know there is within them goodness, and give them from the wealth of Allah which He has given you. And do not compel your slave girls to prostitution, if they desire chastity, to seek thereby the temporary interests of worldly life. And if someone should compel them, then indeed Allah is to them after their compulsion forgiving and merciful.
Now, so first of all, Allah Azza wa Jal tells that those who are not yet able to get married, keep away from zina until Allah Azza wa Jal gives you the wealth to be able to get married. And those who have this issue of seeking a contract, this is the mukataba. So what it is that the slave comes and says, I want to buy my own freedom. Because slavery is not something which is the default state of a person, right? That, it's not something that is praiseworthy for a person to be in that situation. For they have the right to mukataba, which is that they go to their owner and say, I want to buy my freedom. This says that the owner does not have the right to refuse if you see within them goodness. Now, within them goodness here, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, and if you see them able to be able to fulfill the conditions of the mukataba, or if you see within them, if you see within them the ability, khayran, the ability to earn and righteousness in the religion. So there's two things. If you see goodness in their religion, and if you see that they have the ability to earn, then there is a contract of manumission, a contract of freedom. So the slave effectively works to pay their own value. And that's approximately how it works. They work to pay back their own value according to a system that exists. And then after that, they are freed. So they free themselves through work. The condition is righteousness in the religion and that they have the ability to work, and they have the ability to do that work to be able to purchase their own freedom. And Islam encourages the freeing of slaves in every possible context. In almost all of the sins that you do, there is some option of freeing a slave. For freeing the slave is something that is a goal of Islam. It's not something that is just occasionally. Islam encourages at every opportunity for the slaves to be freed. Like, and as we answered before in some of the podcasts with regard to the Sharia, people need to understand three things about slavery. First of all, people need to understand that the slavery in Islam was how we deal with prisoners of war. It was not slavery based on race, color, kidnapping people from the road. And it was slavery based on prisoners of war. And someone fought against you in a war and lost the war. If I ask you, wallahi, which is more merciful? Is it more merciful for that person who you fought against in a war to be put in a prison camp, and you saw how the prison camps were? Yani like a concentration camp, like what happened to the soldiers in the Second World War, for example, in the Far East. Is that more merciful, or in the wars that have happened? Or is it more merciful that that person is enslaved and lives alongside you, that you clothe them with what you clothe yourself with, you feed them with what you feed yourself with? I find it so strange that people have a problem with slavery, in the Islamic concept of slavery. I think that, people actually understand what happens to prisoners of war when you don't have this system? The torture, the horrible conditions in the prisons and what they did to them in the concentration camps and so on. And no doubt, slavery is a far, far better system. That the prisoner of war is enslaved. Then they can be ransomed. If that is the prisoner before they're enslaved, they can be ransomed. In other words, before they become a slave, they can be ransomed. It could be that the Muslim ruler or the general in charge of the army says, these ones, ransom them. And so they're released for a prisoner exchange. They're released in return for money. Or they can be enslaved. And if they are enslaved, then what happens to those who are enslaved from the non-Muslims or their families, and the children or the women that were captured in the battle are enslaved. If they are enslaved, then after that, you have to treat them in the best possible way. And then after that, what do you have to do? And so this enslavement happens to what? Happens to the women and the children. So then what do you have to do? You have to look after them, you have to clothe them, you have to feed them, and then you have to free them every time you make a mistake. And every time you do these big sins, you free a slave. Then on top of that, what do you have? That if they come to you and ask to buy their freedom, they have to be given the ability to buy their freedom. And you let them marry. People talk about intimacy with a female slave, which is permissible in some situations. Like, also Allah tells you, marry them off. There's no, it's not every female slave that a person will be intimate with. And after that, he marries his female slaves and the male slaves together, let them marry, let them have a family life. For wallahi, tell me, is this better, or is it better to be in a concentration camp? Like how people deal with prisoners of war today. For wallahi, أَتَسْتَبْدِلُونَ الَّذِي هُوَ خَيْرٌ. And you took a ruling that was better and you exchanged it for a ruling that is far worse. And give them from the wealth of Allah Azza wa Jal that He gave. Either this is from the mukataba, or to let people help. For this is from the Sunnah, and it happened to Salman al-Farisi, radiyallahu anhu. It happened to Salman that when he was enslaved, and the Muslims came together to support him to pay the money to free himself. This is the meaning of that in the ayah, that you help. Either you don't take the mukataba from them and just say to them, you don't have to pay anything, you're free, or lighten the load for them, or let the Muslims come together and help to pay for the slave to be freed. If you see goodness in their religion and you see they have an ability to live, because bear in mind, what do you do if for the whole of your life you've been living with someone paying for your food and your clothes, and then suddenly you are free, you don't have anybody to support you. So if you see from them that they have the ability to do that, and you see from them that they are religious, free them. Let them be free. That's the same as the ruling of Walad. And for example, the woman that the man is intimate with she's a female slave. If she conceives a child, the child sets her free. The child will set her free. And Maria, radiallahu anha, she was a female slave. Radiallahu anha. The female slave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Maria, al-Qibtiyya radiallahu anha. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam offered to free her. He said to her, if you wish, I'll free her. She said, O Messenger of Allah, it's easier for you and for me that you don't free me. And I don't want the burden of living as a free woman and all that difficulty and responsibility and the responsibility of being a wife and all of that that's a burden on me. And it's a burden on you as well. And you're going to free me. So instead of that burden on me and you, leave me as I am. And when she gave birth to Ibrahim, radiallahu an, Ibrahim freed her. When the Prophet ﷺ died, or the difference of opinion among the scholars, she was freed by Ibrahim, who passed away. The son of the Prophet ﷺ, Ibrahim, freed her in the ruling of Walad. For Islam has such an amazing, perfect, just system. And it's not the case that slavery doesn't exist. In the world today, the Muslims have turned their back and they've taken instead they've taken instead what the world has settled upon in terms of prisoners of war and things like that, which in my view is a worse situation than the one that they left. But anyway, now the point is that the rulings don't change. The rulings have not, the Qur'an, the ayat have not been abrogated. Maybe there's a war next week and it will start again. For the rulings of slavery are not any unfair. They are incredibly just and balanced and fair to everyone concerned. And it's a very just way of dealing with any captives in the time of war. For example, the women and children that are captured. Their husband has been killed. The father is dead. What do you want to do with them? You want to leave them by themselves to just die on the earth? And you bring them into your home, you look after them, and they work for you. For they also were part of the problem. For it's a very, very balanced system. And I'm not doing it justice by explaining all the details. It's not a fiqh lesson, but I'm just trying for you to understand. And this is from the evil that people did in the time of Jahiliyyah, don't compel your slave girls to prostitution. And that's what they used to do. Wallahu musta'an. To farm out their slave girls as prostitutes. And so Allah Azza wa Jal prohibited this evil practice. That these slave girls who want chastity, who are righteous, and Allah Azza wa Jal, and He said, you want some money out of it, is this how you want to earn your money? You want to earn something in the worldly life like this? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and if they are compelled, if someone compels them to it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive them. Allah didn't say He will forgive the person who did it. And taban, if they repent, that's a different matter. The Allah is after this was done to them, Allah will forgive them because they were compelled to do it. Because they were compelled to do it. As just one point I want to make a note of. What's the benefit of mentioning if they desire chastity? Is the mafhum of the ayah, if they don't want to be chaste, that you can sell them in prostitution? Is that the understanding of the ayah? It's not. As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, because the only situation where you're compelling them is when they want to be chaste. And the ayah means when they want to be chaste, that is when you're compelling them. Otherwise, if they don't want to be chaste, you're not compelling them in the first place. They are sinful and you're sinful, both of you. The ayah came down in a situation where neither they want it and they're forced by their owner. Like when they themselves go out and commit zina, that's not the meaning of the ayah. When they go out and commit zina, that's their mistake as well. If they are content with that, that's a worse evil. And they are sinful and the owner is sinful if they are content with that. But Allah revealed the ayah with regard to the women that are not content with it, because the one who is content with it, she falls under the ruling that came in the beginning of Surah An-Noor regarding the lashes and the exile, all of those things. So the ayah, people really, wallahi, especially the enemies of Islam and the Orientalists, they came to this ayah and they tried to show two things. They tried to say that it's okay to farm out the slave girls in prostitution if they are okay with it. And that completely goes against the beginning of the surah, Surah An-Noor, which came to say that the zani and the zaniya, فَجْلِدُوا كُلَّ وَاحِدٍ مِنْهُمَا مِئَةَ جَلْدَةٍ. And he whipped them 100 times. It's not, it doesn't fall under that rule. The ayah came down to say that how terrible of a sin is it that your slave girl wants to be chaste and good and you force her to be otherwise. The second thing they want to show is that Allah says that you'll be forgiven for giving them out in prostitution. And they change what the meaning of the dhamir is in the ayah. And the ayah says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مِن بَعْدِ إِكْرَاهِهِنَّ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And they brought the ayah to refer to the men. Don't worry about it. If you do it, Allah will forgive you. That's not the meaning of the ayah. Allah will forgive them. Allah will forgive those women. But these are from the things that if you hear some of the Orientalists or the kuffar or the Christian missionaries speak about this, they use this ayah to try to take the Muslims away from their deen. That's why I stopped on it for a long time, even though we don't have time, but I stopped because they use this ayah. They say, see, look at your religion. Your religion says that, to be honest, it's absolutely fine to, basically send these women out in prostitution. And even if it's a bad thing, you'll still be forgiven for it. They took the ayah in completely the wrong context deliberately. To give people the wrong impression of Islam. The ayah, in aradana tahassunan, because the ayah didn't come down about the zaniya, the ayah came down about the one who is not a zaniya. As for the zaniya, she is blameworthy and her Sayyid is blameworthy, both of them. And the one that sent her for prostitution and her being content with that, both of them are blameworthy. Both of them are blameworthy. As for if she is innocent and he is guilty, so this is what the ayah came down about. Because if they're both guilty, they come into the first ayah of the ayat of Surah An-Noor. Like in the ayah came with regard to the fact that she is innocent and he is guilty, and the owner. And the second point is the forgiveness is for her, not for him. If he makes tawbah, يدخل فيه. And he can enter into the forgiveness if he makes tawbah. فَمَنْ تَابَ مِنْ بَعْدِ وَأَصْلَحْ. The person makes tawbah and corrects himself. No doubt. And he makes tawbah and he stops doing it and he goes, and he makes up for the ill that he did. He can be forgiven as well. Like the forgiveness initially comes for who? The one who's forced to do something. That's a general ruling in Islam, right? If you're forced to do something, you are forgiven for it.
وَلَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ آيَاتٍ مُبَيِّنَاتٍ وَمَثَلًا مِنَ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِن قَبْلِكُمْ وَمَوْعِظَةً لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And we have certainly sent down to you distinct verses and examples from those who passed on before you, and admonition for those who fear Allah.
Now, there's no doubt the ayat are distinct, and the ayat contain so many rulings and ordinances. And for example, in this surah, people ask, like, why does it keep the ayahs keep saying that we sent down ayat, we sent down? Why does it keep coming? Because each surah has its own feeling in terms of rules and regulations. And look how many rules. I mean, subhanAllah, we've been doing the surah for so long, and we so many rules and regulations that Allah Azza wa Jalla sent down, and each surah has its own set of regulations and rules. And ahkam and so on. And an example of the examples from the people who were before you, so that you take a warning from it.
الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The example of His light is like a niche within which is a lamp. The lamp is within glass. The glass as if it were a pearly white star lit from the oil of a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow even if untouched by fire. Light upon light, Allah guides to His light whom He wills, and Allah presents examples for the people, and Allah is knowing of all things.
And this is the ayah for which the surah was named. And it is one of, if not the greatest example that is put forward in terms of the amthal that are put forward in the Qur'an. Because it speaks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah's guidance. First of all, Allah Azza wa Jal, and I'm going to read you what As-Sa'di says, because wallahi, I just believe if you have an imam like Imam As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, and aqidatuhu salima, his aqidah is correct, and he's a great imam in issues of the asma' sifat, the aqidah, and he's someone like that, it doesn't deserve for me to explain it. I'm just literally going to tell you what he said. He said, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, al-hissi wal ma'nawi. Allah in Himself is light. For light is a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ثابتة لله سبحانه وتعالى. So it includes both I don't like the word physical, because I think the word physical might not be the right word, but it includes the light itself, which is a description of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it includes the light which is the light of guidance. So both for want of a better word, I'm not sure if it's the right word, physical, light. I don't like that word physical, because I feel like it's not the right thing to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it so speaks about physics and the universe, and Allah is free from resembling His creation. But the light which is a description of Him, and the light which is His guidance, both of them, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. And He Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala is light. And His hijab, if it were not for that hijab, everything in the heavens would have, their eyes would have been burnt from it. He said, لولا لطفه لأحرقت صبحات وجهه أو وجه من انتهى إليه بصره من خلقه. Anyone who saw it from His creation, their eyes would be burnt from the blinding light that is the hijab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hijabuhu nur. Allah Azza wa Jal is veiled by light. So Allah Azza wa Jal, light is a sifa for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fi dhatihi subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. And light is the hijab by which Allah veils Himself from His creation. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ saw from Allah. He didn't see Allah Azza wa Jal, like he saw the light that is the hijab, yani the partition, the veil between Allah and between His creation. And because of this light, in the light of the veil, istanar al-arsh, the arsh is lit up from it, and the kursi, the footstool, and the sun, and the moon, and all of the other lights. And from it, Jannah is lit up. Likewise, the Noor, which is ma'nawi, the Noor which is not referring to physical, for want of a better word, light, but is referring to the light of guidance. It comes back to Allah. His book is Noor. His Sharia is Noor. Iman and knowing Him in the heart of His messengers and His believing servants is Noor. So if it were not for His Noor, the people would be languishing in darknesses. And for this reason, everything that is missing that light, meaning missing the light of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a place of darkness and a place of evil. Now the parable that is given here, which of the two is it a parable for? Which of the two and why? Is it a parable for the physical light or a parable for the light of guidance? The example that is given, مَثَلُ نُورِهِ, the example of it. This is for the guidance. Why? Because we don't, فَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ الْأَمْثَالِ, we don't give any examples like that with regard to Allah's sifat. Right? We don't say His sifat is like this. Does that make sense? We don't say Allah's attribute is like this. Allah's hand is like this. Now, the Noor here is the Noor of Iman and the Noor of the Qur'an. Now, in the parable, the first Noor in the surah, no. The first Noor is the Noor of Allah, both of it. Both a Noor which is a sifa and the Noor of the hijab and the Noor of guidance. Allahu Noor as-samawati wal-ard. That's why the capital L in light, Allah is the light with a capital L. And from His names is An-Noor, subhanahu wa ta'ala. After that comes the example of the light of guidance, the light of the Qur'an. Is like a niche in which there is a lamp. A niche is cut in the wall. If you imagine you have a wall, like the wall that is behind us, and you have carved in it like the mihrab, like a niche in the wall, like for example, like how the mihrab is carved into the wall. Does that make sense? And if you chopped a bit out of the wall, and you had like a hole, if you like, or like a small depression in the wall. This is the mishkah. فيها مصباح. فيها مصباح. There is a lamp in it. So first of all, if you have a very bright lamp, and that lamp on its own is bright, what do you think about when you put it into that niche where there's a bright white wall behind it? What will happen to that lamp? It will be even brighter, right? And you have a bright lamp and you put it into a niche in the wall with, for example, a reflective or a white cover behind it. And the light will be even brighter. And here, as-Sa'di says, it means the intensity of the light will be stronger. Because it's not just the light that is bright, but putting it into that notch, that was the word I was looking for, the notch in the wall. Putting it into a notch in the wall will make it completely intense, and its light is not lost anywhere. So if you imagine, if you have a light, and the light shines in one place, but not in the other. Let's say, as an example, let's say a torch. The beam shines in one place and it's dark in the other. But when you put it into the niche in the wall, it's intense. You don't see any shadow at all. You don't see any darkness at all. Al-misbahu fi zujaja. This lamp is encased in glass. The glass, because of its purity and its cleanliness, is like a bright shining star. Yani the glass itself is so bright and so clean and so pure that the glass itself shines like a star. يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة. Yani the oil for this lamp, that the fuel for this lamp, that shines like a bright shining star, that is put into the notch, that focuses all of its energy, as if you had taken a star from the sky and you had placed a star from the sky inside of a notch in the wall. The brightness cannot be described. The fuel for this, it is from Zayt az-Zaytun. It's from the tree of the olive. That its brightness when it burns is the brightest from the fuel that they used to light their lamps with. And when they used to light their lamps, from the best of the fuel they used to light it with is olive oil, because of the brightness that it would shine with. And this tree itself is a blessed tree. And subhanAllah, the fuel is blessed. Are we still following the example? Are we following the example? You have a notch in the wall. You have a bright light. You put that bright light into the notch in the wall, the intensity is complete, there's no shadow. The glass is so bright and so pure and so polished that it shines like a white star. The fuel for that lamp is the fuel of the olive tree, which itself has barakah in it. It's a tree that is shajara mubarakah. It is a blessed tree from a blessed land. Neither leaning to the east or the west. What does it mean? This, they say, what it means is that the olive tree, if it only gets sun in the morning, and if it only faces one direction, it will only have a certain quality to it. And if it only gets sun in the evening, in the east or the west, it will only have a certain quality to it. But this tree, it receives the sun throughout the whole day. So its oil is the best of the oil of the best of trees, the best of fuel. The oil is so bright that the oil itself is giving out light. يَكَادُ زَيْتُهَا يُضِيءُ. The oil itself looks like it's light. وَلَوْ لَمْ تَمْسَسْهُ نَارٌ. Even if you didn't put fire on it. And even if you hadn't put fire on it, the oil is so bright, the quality of the tree is so good that the oil itself has a light to it as though it was on fire. نور على نور. Yani نور على نور, the nur of the fire, the nur of the light, the nur of the oil, the nur of the notch. It is light upon light. Yani light on top of light. As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, this example that Allah Azza wa Jal put forward and how to apply it in the life of the believer and the light of a person in their heart and the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a person upon is like pure oil. The fitrah is safiyah. So As-Sa'di here, he says the example of the oil is the example of the fitrah, the nature of a person. It's clean. It's ready to be lit. It's ready for divine knowledge to enter that heart, which is the Noor. And the Noor is the divine knowledge. Any knowledge of the religion. The heart is ready. When the baby is born, that heart is like a lamp that has not yet been lit. In it is the zaytun, the pure oil, the purity of the fitrah. It's waiting for the knowledge to come to it of Tawheed. It's waiting to act and practice that which it has in it, that which is in its nature. So when knowledge and Iman reach it, it's set alight in the person's heart. Like the one who lit that lamp. And that is that the heart will be pure from what's the word? Bad intentions. That's the glass. The example of the glass is the purity of your intention. If your heart is not clean, if your heart is not pure, the light of Allah Azza wa Jal will not shine out from it. The light of Allah Azza wa Jal will only shine out when the heart is pure. So when a person has a pure, sincere heart and is kept upon the fitrah, and then the sharia comes to them and the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal comes to them and they accept it and they bring Iman into their heart, that person now has lit the fuel. And their heart is like the glass. And so the light of Allah Azza wa Jal shines out from it like that lamp that is placed into the notch. So the person has the light of the fitrah, which is the oil, the light of Iman and knowledge, which is the lamp, and they have the purity of their intention and the correctness of their action, which is the cleanliness of the glass. Noorun ala noor, light upon light. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal said, Yahdi Allahu li noorihi man yasha. Allah guides to His noor whoever He wants. وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ. And Allah gives examples to the people, any parables to the people, so that you can understand. And Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge that encompasses every single thing. For we said here that the Noor here is the Noor of guidance, the Noor of knowledge, the Noor of Iman. يعني مثل نوره, يعني نور العلم, Noor al-Qur'an, Noor al-Iman, in the parable, in the example. As for Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any light is a description of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala in Himself, and it's a description of the veil by which Allah Azza wa Jal is veiled from His creation, and by which everything in the heavens and earth is lit up. فَسُبْحَانَ رَبِّنَا.
في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. Such niches are in houses which Allah has ordered to be raised and that His name be mentioned, therein exalting Him within them in the morning and the evenings.
Naam, here is Amr al-Azim. Where is the niche that will make that light shine out? Now you have the lamp, you have the glass, you're shining. Where is the notch in the wall? Where is it? Where is that light going to shine out? And you have the light of knowledge, the light of Iman. The glass is your sincerity and the correctness of your worship. The light is shining out. The fitrah is fueling it. It's being given the knowledge of the sharia. Where is the notch in the wall? In the masjid. The mishkat, it's in the masjid. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع. And that is where that light shines the brightest. نعم السعدي رحمه الله تعالى يعني he says في بيوت, which is the masajid, and he doesn't mention more about it, I don't think. نعم, yeah, he said when the Noor of Iman and the Qur'an, the most likely place, the most likely cause of this Noor of the Qur'an and Iman is in the masjid. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع, houses that Allah Azza wa Jal allowed to be built, yani masajid, in which His name is mentioned. People glorify Him in the morning and the evenings.
رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار. Are men whom neither commerce nor sale distracts from the remembrance of Allah and performance of prayer and giving of zakah. They fear a day in which the hearts and eyes will fearfully turn about.
نعم, يعني the men here, the men in the masjid, نعم, the men who are in the masjid. These men are not distracted by buying or selling. And they're not distracted by their job from coming to the masjid, performing the prayer and giving the zakah. They fear a day when the hearts and eyes will fearfully turn. And wallahi, we need to implement this ayah. That if your job keeps you away from the masjid, keeps you away from the salah, for what good is there in it? Sahih, a person could sometimes have a job where they have to travel and they join between their prayers. I mean from that, a person who they're not praying on time, they're not praying properly, they're not praying in the jama'ah because of their job. For what good is there in it? The people Allah praised are the people that buying and selling doesn't stop them from the dhikr of Allah and performing the prayer in the right place, the right time and the right way. Not rushing the prayer, performing the prayer properly and giving the zakah, because they're scared of a day when the hearts and eyes will turn about in terror, and you tremble in terror.
ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. That Allah may reward them according to the best of what they did and increase them from His bounty, and Allah gives provision to whom He wills without account. والذين كفروا أعمالهم كسراب بقيعة يحسبه الظمآن ماء حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه والله سريع الحساب. But those who disbelieve, their deeds are like a mirage in a low land which are thirsty, which a thirsty one thinks is water, until when he comes to it, he finds it is nothing but finds Allah before him, and He will pay him in his full due, and Allah is swift in account.
Any qi'a here, it doesn't have to be a lowland. It's a land that doesn't have any vegetation, like a barren land, a barren plain, like a desert. Their deeds are like a mirage in the desert. When you approach a mirage in the desert, you're traveling in the desert and you approach a mirage. What do you think it is? You're thirsty, you're walking in the desert, and you see water on the horizon. So you rush and you make yourself more thirsty because the water is in front of you. and you rush to it and you come to the water, except that it's not water. It was just a mirage. And the person thought their deeds counted for something, thought they were doing something good. And it's like the person in the desert, all they did is make themselves more thirsty. They find it to be nothing, except that they find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before them, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will preserve every single action that they did, and Allah will take them to account for everything that they did, subhanahu wa ta'ala. For this example is a very, very powerful example. You imagine these people, they believe that what ahead of them is good. They believe that if I'm وَلَئِن رُدِدْتُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي, if I'm going to be returned to my Lord, أَجِدَنَّ خَيْرًا مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا, I'm going to find even better than what. Allah is going to give me Jannah, and in front of me is so much good, and I'm doing such amazing things. Exactly like the person who's thirsty in the desert. And they see the water in front of them, so they run, even though they're thirsty, even though they're losing what little water they have left. They run to it to take the water, and it was just an illusion. And this world was an illusion. The actions they did in it didn't count for anything. And Allah Azza wa Jal takes them to account for all of their sins and punishes them with the worst of punishments.
أو كظلمات في بحر لجي يغشاه موج من فوقه موج من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض إذا أخرج يده لم يكد يراها ومن لم يجعل الله له نورا فما له من An-Noor. Or they are like darknesses within an unfathomable sea. Unfathomable sea, which is covered by waves, upon which are waves, over which are clouds, darknesses, some of them upon others. When one puts out his hand therein, he can hardly see it, and he to whom Allah has not granted light, for him there is no light.
And another example that is given for the disbeliever is an unfathomable sea, the deepest of seas. We're not talking about a sea where you can touch the bottom with your feet, or where the bottom is just a few meters down and you can come back up. A sea which you cannot imagine how deep it is. The waves are pouring on top of each other, not one set of waves. And it's not like you're swimming in that sea with the waves. The waves are crashing. There's a storm and the waves are crashing on top of each other. So the sea is completely dark, the deep, deep sea. And on top of that sea are dark waves, and on top of those waves are more waves, and on top of those waves are thunderclouds. This person, when they take their own hand in front of their face, they can't see it, or they can barely see it. So how will they be a light for someone else? How will they be a guidance for somebody else? How will they be able to see the road of guidance or the path to Allah Azza wa Jal when they can't see their own hand in front of their eyes? And the one that Allah doesn't give the light of knowledge and Iman and the Qur'an, that person doesn't have any light at all. So their example is the person dropped into the deepest ocean in the middle of a storm where the waves are crashing one on top of the other and the thunder clouds are above the head. Darkness upon darkness upon darkness. Contrast that to the example of the one who the olive oil is lighting his heart with. He's got Iman, he's got the fitrah, he's got the Qur'an, he's got knowledge of Islam, he's got a clean intention and actions in accordance with the Sunnah, and he's in the masjid where that light is the most intense. Compare that to the one who is dropped into the middle of the ocean. In the middle of a thunderstorm, the waves are crushing on top of each other and the thunder clouds are above his head. There is darkness on top of darkness upon darkness. He takes out his hand. إِذَا أَخْرَجَ يَدَهُ لَمْ يَكَدْ يَرَاهَا. He can't even see his own hand in front of him. And if Allah doesn't give you light, then you won't have any light at all. We're on to ayah number 41 in Surah An-Noor.
ألم تر أن الله يسبح له من في السماوات والأرض والطير صافات كل قد علم
صلاته
كل قد علم صلاته وتسبيحه والله عليم بما يفعلون. Do you not see that Allah is exalted by whomever is within the heavens and the earth and by the birds with wings spread in flight? Each of them has known his means of prayer and exalting him, and Allah is knowing of what they do.
Yeah. In Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he took a view that do we say that these two examples of the mirage and the sea are the same type of kafir, or are they different? Are they the same or are they different? But you could say that each one of them applies to a different any situation or a different any type. In other words, the first one is for the one who is being followed, the leader among them, because they believe they have something. The leader believes he has good deeds, he's doing something for his people, and that the ones following that leader are like the ones dropped into the dark sea. And he said it is possible that both of them apply to every kafir, and that the kafir is someone who is like the one in the dark sea and like the one who sees the mirage in the desert. After that, Allah Azza wa Jal shows His greatness and His authority and His power over His creation, that everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah. And it says, Subhanallah. And including the birds with their wings spread. Every one of them has its own salah, means of prayer, and its own way of saying Subhanallah. وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. But you don't understand how they do that. That is Allah Azza wa Jal, وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِمَا يَفْعَلُونَ. Allah knows how they perform that salah and how they perform that tasbih. You don't know how it is. But every one of them has a salah for them and a tasbih for them.
وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَإِلَى اللَّهِ الْمَصِيرُ. And to Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and to Allah is the destination.
Now, the final return.
ألم تر أن الله يزجي سحابا ثم يؤلف بينه ثم يجعله ركاما فترى الودق يخرج من خلاله وينزل من السماء من جبال فيها من برد فيصيب به من يشاء ويصرفه عن من يشاء يكاد سنا برقه يذهب بالأبصار. Do you not see that Allah drives clouds, then He brings them together, then He makes them into a mass, and you see the rain emerge from within it, and He sends down from the sky mountains of clouds within which is hail, and He strikes with it whom He wills and averts it from whom He wills. The flash of its lightning almost takes away the eyesight.
And Allah Azza wa Jal describes how Allah Azza wa Jal brings the clouds together. These are from the ayat that people mentioned it as from the scientific miracles of the Qur'an. Well, it's possible, the ayah has, the tafseer is accurate, that Allah Azza wa Jal drives the clouds, joining them together, piling them up on top of each other. And you see the rain come from it. And He sends down from the sky mountains of clouds within which is hail, and He strikes whoever He wills, with the lightning, or He strikes with the hail whoever He wills. and he averts it from whoever he wills. And the flash of lightning almost takes away the eyesight. And the one who does this is Kamilul Qudra subhanahu wa ta'ala, has complete power over everything subhanahu wa ta'ala.
يقلب الله الليل والنهار إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. Allah alternates the night and the day. Indeed, in that is a lesson for those who have vision. والله خلق كل دابة من ماء فمنهم من يمشي على بطنه ومنهم من يمشي على رجلين ومنهم من يمشي على أربع يخلق الله ما يشاء إن الله على كل شيء قدير. Allah has created every living creature from water. And of them are those that move on their bellies. And of them are those that walk on two legs. And of them are those that walk on four. Allah creates what He wills. Indeed, Allah is able to do all things.
No. And this is also from the complete power and authority and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that cannot be repelled from anyone.
لقد أنزلنا آيات مبينات والله يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. We have certainly sent down distinct verses, and Allah guides whom He wills to a straight path.
Any ayat that clarify the truth. And this includes the ayat which are in describe Allah's kawn, and these ayat which describe the clouds and which describe the rain, and the ayat which describe the animals, those that walk on two legs and those that walk on four and those that slide on their bellies. And all of these are from the ayat of Allah that Allah has clarified in the utmost detail. And the purpose of that is for a person to be guided to the Sirat al-Mustaqim.
ويقولون آمنا بالله وبالرسول وأطعنا ثم يتولى فريق منهم من بعد ذلك وما أولئك بالمؤمنين. But they say, we have believed in Allah and in the Messenger, and we obey. Then a party of them turns away after that, and those are not believers.
The hypocrites.
وَإِذَا دُعُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ لِيَحْكُمَ بَيْنَهُمْ إِذَا فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. And when they are called to the words of Allah and His Messenger to judge between them, at once a party of them turns aside in refusal.
Those who didn't get the judgment they wanted. That's the way of the munafiqeen, right? If they don't get the judgment they wanted, they turn away. And they said, if you are given this, take it. And if you are not given this, وَإِن لَمْ تُؤْتَوْهُ فَاحْذَرُوا. If you are not given the judgment you want, run away from it.
وَإِن يَكُنْ لَهُمُ الْحَقُّ يَأْتُوا إِلَيْهِ مُذْعِنِينَ. But if the right is theirs, they come to Him in prompt obedience.
And if the judgment is in their favor, they obey. But if the judgment is not in their favor, they run away.
أَفِي قُلُوبِهِم مَّرَضٌ أَمِ ارْتَابُوا أَمْ يَخَافُونَ أَفِي قُلُوبِهِم مَّرَضٌ أَمِ ارْتَابُوا أَمْ يَخَافُونَ أَن يَحِيفَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَرَسُولُهُ بَلْ أُولَئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Is there disease in their hearts? Or have they doubted? Or do they fear that Allah will be unjust to them or His Messenger? Rather, it is they who are the wrongdoers.
And do they fear that the judgment of Islam will be unjust? Rather, they are the ones who are unjust.
إنما كان قول المؤمنين إذا دعوا إلى الله ورسوله ليحكم بينهم أن يقولوا سمعنا وأطعنا وأولئك هم المفلحون. The only statement of the true believers when they are called to Allah and His Messenger to judge between them is that they say, we hear and we obey, and those are the successful.
And that's the believers. The believers, whatever judgment is made for them or against them, they say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. And we have heard and we obey the judgment that you have given and the rules and the laws and the regulations that you've sent down.
وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَ اللَّهَ وَيَتَّقِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ.
One more time, I just want to hear يَتَّقِهِ.
وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَ اللَّهَ وَيَتَّقِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ.
It's a hard ayah to read.
And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger and fears Allah and is conscious of Him, it is those who are the attainers.
Now, if you join it, can you join it? Can you read it by joining it without stopping on يَتَّقِهِ? وَيَتَّقِهِ.
وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَ اللَّهَ وَيَتَّقِهِ
Nearly. يَتَّقِ is the qalqala. يَتَّقِهِ.
وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَ اللَّهَ وَيَتَّقِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ.
As I said, it's difficult. It's a difficult ayah to read. Like the idea is the qalqala. يَتَّقِ and then the ha. يَتَّقِهِ. It's difficult. It's a difficult ayah to read. Like Jade, continue inshallah.
وَأَقْسَمُوا
Afwan, did you read the English for me? Whoever obeys Allah?
I think I did, yeah.
Afwan,
and whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger and fears Allah and is conscious of Him is those who are the attainers.
And fears Allah and has taqwa of Him. It is those who will be the ones who will triumph. That's what I think is better. Triumph. They will win. They will be the winners. They will be the ones who will triumph. The ones who obey Allah and the Messenger. They fear Allah and they have taqwa of Him. They keep away from what Allah prohibited.
وَأَقْسَمُوا بِاللَّهِ جَهْدَ أَيْمَانِهِمْ لَئِنْ أَمَرْتَهُمْ وَأَقْسَمُوا بِاللَّهِ جَهْدَ أَيْمَانِهِمْ لَئِنْ أَمَرْتَهُمْ لَيَخْرُجُنَّ قُلْ لَا تُقْسِمُوا طَاعَةٌ مَعْرُوفَةٌ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And they swear by Allah their strongest oaths, that if you ordered them, they would go forth in Allah's cause. Say, do not swear, such obedience is known. Indeed, Allah is fully aware of which you do.
And it's known to be false. And it's the munafiqeen. They swear by Allah, jahda aymanihim. Wallahi, if you tell us to go for jihad, we will go. Don't swear. Say to them, there's no need to swear. We know that your obedience is false. And Allah is fully aware of what you do.
قُلْ أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْهِ مَا حُمِّلَ وَعَلَيْكُمْ مَا حُمِّلْتُمْ وَإِن تُطِيعُوهُ تَهْتَدُوا وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. Say, obey Allah and obey the Messenger. But if you turn away, then upon him is only that duty with which he has been charged, and upon you is that with which you have been charged. And if you obey him, you'll be rightly guided, and there is not upon the Messenger except the responsibility for clear notification.
And you look at the strong command to follow the Sunnah. If you obey him, you will be rightly guided. If you follow the sunnah, you will be rightly guided.
وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون. Allah has promised those who have believed among you and done righteous deeds that He will surely grant them
Succession.
Yeah, I know. He will surely grant them succession.
No, succession. It's late. I know it's close to iftar.
Yeah.
Succession. Now you're making me say it wrong.
Yeah. To authority upon the earth, just as He granted it to those before them, and that He will surely establish for them therein their religion which He has preferred for them, and that He will surely substitute for them after their fear security, for they worship Me, not associating anything with Me. But whoever disbelieves after that, then those are the defiantly disobedient.
Now here, Allah Azza wa Jal, and this ayah is a very important ayah in the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in the issue of istikhlaf, yani Allah Azza wa Jal giving you authority on the earth. That authority is a gift from Allah. Allah gives you authority on the earth. And it comes about with tawheed. For this ayah destroys what people call, quote unquote, political Islam. And it removes that whole concept from that they built it upon from beginning to end. And what I mean by that is, it's a strange word. I don't like the word because in reality, politics is a part of Islam. Siyasa, Shari'ah is a part of Islam. But what these people do is to get involved in the politics of the non-Muslim countries and to get involved in the non-Islamic ways of rulership with a goal of implementing Islam from the inside by ignoring Tawheed and gathering together all of the different groups together under one banner. كما هو شأن الإخوان, the condition of the Ikhwan and those who followed them. This ayah destroys their view from beginning to end. Wallahi, you don't need an ayah after this one. First of all, Allah Azza wa Jal tells that having political authority on the earth comes about from Tawheed. It doesn't come about through joining the Rafidah and being best friends with them, or joining the kuffar or voting in the democracy elections. It doesn't come from any of that. It comes from يَعْبُدُونَنِي لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْءٍ. يَعْبُدُونَنِي لَا يُشْرِكُونَ بِي شَيْئًا. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it is from Allah. Allah will give you authority on the earth. You establish Tawheed. That's your job. Establish Tawheed, establish the Sunnah, obey the Messenger, and Allah will put you in authority on the earth without any need to join any elections and political parties and all of this that they do. But the worst thing is not even that. The worst thing is that when they do that, they are willing to compromise on the laws of Islam. And some of the ulama said this is the meaning of وَمَنْ كَفَرَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ. Whoever disbelieves after that, meaning the person doesn't live by the rules of Islam. They don't implement, they reject the blessing of Allah after it came to them. They are the fasiqun. For the ayah shows that the position of Ahl Sunnah is very clear. Your job is to correct yourself, the people around you, your society, your community, by commanding them tawheed and keeping them away from shirk and commanding them to obey the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when that correction, that islah takes place in the mujtama', in the community, the thamara of it will be the khilafah. In the ayah says, al-khilafatu thamara. The khilafah is a fruit of tawheed. It's not an alternative to tawheed. It's not that you bring it first and then tawheed. You bring Tawheed first of all, and the Khilafah is a thamara. It's a fruit that comes out of it. لا يستخلفنكم. Allah Azza wa Jal will place you in a Khilafah on the earth, like He gave it to those who came before. He will allow you to practice your religion freely, that He's pleased with you. He will replace your fear with safety. When you worship me and don't make any partner with me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. For this ayah tells us that this way, wallahi, is a way that it is a means which has been a failure. And this idea of getting involved in the politics of the non-Muslims, which in joining political parties, in trying to fix the system from the inside. Wallahi, it has been a failure since the idea started. And you can go all the way back to the early days, which really this movement started in the late 19th and early 20th century. Why do you think it started in the late 19th and early 20th century? What was the feature? At that time, the loss of the Dawla al-Uthmaniyya, the Ottoman Empire. When the Ottoman Empire fell, the Muslims were shocked. Not just the Ottoman Empire, but before that, when the empire in India, when they lost that, they became shocked. Suddenly they were like, where is we've always known Muslim authority on the earth. We've always known. Ala ma kana fi, whatever was in it, the shirk, the issues that they had, and all of the problems that were there. But we had never known a time where Muslim authority fell on the earth. At the time of the First World War, when it truly and completely collapsed. So it collapsed long before that. I'm going to talk about this in my Firaq and Iftiraq, inshaAllah ta'ala, when we do the history of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. The reality is that it fell a long time before that. Like in people's eyes, there was still a name, there was still there was a khilafah by some sort of something. Whatever was in it, but there was something that had a name. The Ottoman Empire, the Caliphate. And when it fell down, the people, to be honest, were lost. What do we do? They didn't come back to the ayah. Because the ayah is simple. Go back to establishing Tawheed among your people. Go back to calling people to the Sunnah. And Allah Azza wa Jal will return you to authority like He gave you authority before. So some of them said, well, in this situation, we have no choice. We have to go inside and underneath. We have to get involved in the politics of them. We have to get involved in the political parties. We have to form voting. We have to do all of this stuff. We have to get involved in overthrowing the Muslim rulers from the inside and any those that split into countries, any that wasn't one big country, and all of that. And wallahi, it is a path and a methodology that has been a complete and total failure since the first day. It failed so many times you would think that people would learn from it. Like, and they didn't learn. And when I was younger, and we don't really have time. And Hizb al-Tahrir was a big influence when we were younger. They're the only people who had a conference in our local, the only people who had a proper halaqah when I was younger, before I went to Jamia Islamiyah. So they're constantly telling us, that the Khilafah is coming tomorrow, next day. If you look at their history, they've been saying that for Allah only knows how long. The point is the entire thing is a failure, from beginning to end. Why? Because nobody came back to this ayah. If they came back to this ayah in Surah An-Noor, they would not have taken the path that they took. Not of this whole political involvement, not of this trying to overthrow the Muslim ruler from the inside, not any of this secret khilafah. I'll be the Minister of Finance and you can be in charge of justice. Says the two brothers in the cafe over coffee. What you want to be? I'll be the Minister of Finance. What about you? It's tariqa fashila. It failed and it will fail again and again and again. Hatman is over. The only thing that the Muslims will get authority from is to go back to this ayah. For Allah Azza wa Jal to place them in authority in the earth because of their tawheed and because of their taqwa and their obedience to the Prophet ﷺ. And when that spreads in the society will bring about, Allah will bring about in that society the change. In Medina, why did they accept the Prophet ﷺ? Why did Medina accept the Prophet ﷺ to rule over them? When Iman spread among them and taqwa and obedience to the Prophet ﷺ, they automatically want, come to us, rule over us. And people at the end of the day, Sarah, I'm going to say it with no, I'm not, Inna Allah la yastahi min al-haq. Allah is not shy of the truth. That the people in charge of you today reflect your own society. Nothing more, nothing less. They reflect who you are. I want you to tell me, people complain, and it's really unfair. They complain especially about the Middle East, and they always have a problem with the Middle East. Like they don't look at their own countries that they're in. Allahumma musta'an is a million times worse. Like in any way, they make this problem all the time. Now, but we say, I want you to show me, cut me as the society out. Pick me 100 people from that country that you complain about, the Hakim, the Wali al-Amr. Pick me 100 people. Wallahi, randomly from the society. They're the same. And you picking me, the society is what they are. They are there because of your society is like that. You people are, generally speaking, it's reflective of what the society is like. I'm not saying everybody. There are righteous, there are unrighteous. Like generally speaking, people get. I'm amazed by that quote about democracy. That says democracy is the belief that people should make a choice and then suffer the consequences of the choice that they made. And at the end of the day, you're getting what it is that your society is upon. For when you correct your society, Allah Azza wa Jal will correct the wulat al-umur, the people that are in charge of you. As for rebelling against them, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited it. And I'm not talking about praise. Praise is a whole different thing. I don't see that the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah is to praise someone who doesn't deserve to be praised. How is this from the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah? To praise someone that doesn't deserve praise. What will I praise someone for? Sahih, I could praise someone relatively. That's true. I could say, Alhamdulillah, we have masajid, we have da'wah, Alhamdulillah, that we're blessed for that. And they deserve praise for that. They deserve to be given an accolade for doing that, for keeping the da'wah and the masajid and everything. Like, should I praise someone universally for everything they do if it's not Islamic? And is that the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah? I want someone to show me from the aqeedah of the Salaf, man qala bihada. فأنا أقول لك, no one said it. It's not the view of the Salaf at all. This is just something people, they brought it later on. This madhun mutlaq, just praising everything that someone does. No, we don't praise everything that someone does. That's not correct. Like, we don't rebel against the person in authority. We don't incite the people against them. Like, you realize that they are there because of your society. They are a reflection of who you are in your society. Generally speaking, that's the general overview. For when you correct yourself and correct your society, Allah Azza wa Jal will correct the people in the society, al-ra'i wal-ra'iyah, the person in charge and the people underneath them. And the ayah is a umda, al-asl in this regard.
وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأطيعوا الرسول لعلكم ترحمون. And establish prayer and give zakah and obey the messenger that you may receive mercy.
نعم.
لا تحسبن الذين كفروا معجزين في الأرض ومأواهم النار ولبئس المصير. Never think that the disbelievers are causing failure to Allah upon the earth. Their refuge will be the fire, and how wretched the destination.
Now, neither will they cause Allah failure, nor will they escape.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا ليستأذنكم الذين ملكت أيمانكم والذين لم يبلغوا الحلم منكم 3 مرات من قبل صلاة الفجر وحين تضعون ثيابكم من الظهيرة ومن بعد صلاة العشاء ثلاث عورات لكم ليس عليكم ولا عليهم جناح بعدهن طوافون عليكم بعضكم على بعض كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات والله عليم حكيم. O you who have believed, let those whom your right hands possess and those who have not yet reached puberty among you ask permission of you before entering at 3 times, before the dawn prayer, and when you put aside your clothing for rest at noon and after the night prayer. These are 3 times of privacy for you. There is no blame upon you nor upon them beyond these periods, for they continue to circulate among you, some of you among others. Thus does Allah make clear to you the verses, and Allah is knowing and wise.
Now, the ayah speaks about the 3 times in which those people who are your young children and your slaves, they need to ask permission before entering. And generally, your young kids can come in and out, right? Like they could just, like your little kids that are younger than puberty, they can, come in and out of your room and things like that. But there are 3 times. Before the dawn prayer, when you put aside your clothing for rest at noon, and after the night prayer. The Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala mentions in this regard, the meaning of before Fajr is when the person wakes up before Fajr, not just when they are asleep, like when they are awake for Fajr. All of these are times when a person may be in need of privacy. Does that make sense? For example, the adhan for Fajr is gone, or the first adhan before Qiyam al-Layl, the person is getting changed, getting ready, privacy, even intimacy, and it's a time of privacy. After they go to sleep at night. So the night time covers them all the way until Fajr. And they're also allowed from Fajr until they come out from their room, because that's the time they could be getting changed and things like that. And when they have their nap at noon, because a person may nap they may take off their regular clothes and wear clothes that don't necessarily cover them properly. People don't necessarily go to sleep in their full clothes. So these are 3 times that even the younger children among them, they should seek permission, they should knock before they enter, or they should ask, can I come in? At those 3 times. As for the other times, there is no harm in them coming in and out. In the middle of the afternoon, there is no harm in them coming in and out. If you haven't told them, if you haven't closed the door and locked the door or something, or you haven't said to them, don't come in, there is no harm in them coming in and out at those other times.
وَإِذَا بَلَغَ الْأَطْفَالُ مِنْكُمُ الْحُلُمَ فَلْيَسْتَأْذِنُوا كَمَا اسْتَأْذَنَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. And when the children among you reach puberty, let them ask permission at all times, as those before them have done. Thus does Allah make clear to you His verses, and Allah is knowing and wise.
Those before them are those who are senior to them in age. Once your children reach puberty, they have to knock in all situations. There is no need for them to, the little younger children, they don't need to knock in the times when it's outside of it's not night time, it's not just after Fajr, and it's not just after the adhan of Fajr, and it's not in the time when you go to sleep during the day.
وَالْقَوَاعِدُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ اللَّاتِي لَا يَرْجُونَ نِكَاحًا فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِنَّ جُنَاحٌ أَنْ يَضَعْنَ ثِيَابَهُنَّ أن يضعن ثيابهن غير متبرجات بزينة وأن يستعففن خير لهن والله سميع عليم. And women of post-menstrual age who have no desire for marriage, there is no blame upon them for putting aside their outer garments but not displaying adornment, but to modestly refrain from that is better for them, and Allah is hearing and knowing.
Now, this needs some explanation. Yani, it doesn't mean that they're post-menstrual age. This is a big problem. Yani. This is a woman could be post-menstrual age at 50, for example. فهذا لا يصح هذا. That's not correct here. Rather, it means those that are too old to have desire. They're too old, they don't have desire, and there's no intimacy. Those that neither do they want to marry, nor does anyone want to marry them. Why that wouldn't necessarily apply to a woman who is 50 or 55. There's women at that age marry. The correct translation is the one that is in the clear Qur'an. The elderly women past the age of marriage. That's the correct translation. This is otherwise. You're saying that a 50-year-old woman can lighten her hijab. She doesn't have to wear full hijab. And mushkil. The ayah came down with regard to the elderly woman who has neither does she want to marry, nor does anybody want to marry her. And she has no desire for intimacy, nor does anyone have desire for intimacy with her. She is permitted, for her to, remove the command which Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ. Let them drape their clothing all over their body. She's permitted to remove that. Now, she still has to dress modesty and so on. Like, she can remove that, the strictness of the hijab, that she has to drape the clothing over her whole body from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. But she can't show her adornment. She can't show her zina. So she can't wear beautiful clothes. And she can't, for example, beautify herself and her face and so on. Like, she can she doesn't have to wear the hijab that the younger woman has to wear. Meaning the full head to toe. She can dress with something that is less than that. But for them not to discard that clothing is better. It's better for her not to do it. It's better for her that she continues to wear her full hijab. Like, if she wasn't as strict with her hijab, as long as she's not beautifying herself, she's an elderly woman, nobody wants to marry her, she doesn't want to marry. That shows that the hijab was revealed for her. From the wisdoms, the hijab was revealed for her.
ليس على الأعمى حرج ولا على الأعرج حرج ولا على المريض حرج ولا على أنفسكم أن تأكلوا من بيوتكم أو بيوت آبائكم أو بيوت بيوت أمهاتكم أو بيوت إخوانكم أو بيوت أخواتكم أو بيوت أعمامكم أو بيوت عماتكم أو بيوت أخوالكم أو بيوت أخوالكم أو بيوت خالاتكم أو ما ملكتم مفاتحه أو صديقكم ليس عليكم جناح أن تأكلوا جميعا أو أشتاتا فإذا دخلتم بيوتا فسلموا على أنفسكم تحية من عند الله مباركة طيبة كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تعقلون. There is not upon the blind any constraint, nor upon the lame constraint, nor upon the ill constraint, nor upon yourselves when you eat from your own houses or the houses of your fathers or the house of your mothers or the house of your brothers or the house of your sisters or the house of your fathers, brothers or the house of your father's brothers or the house of your father's sisters or the house of your mother's brothers or the house of your mother's sisters or from houses whose keys you possess or from the house of your friend. There is no blame upon you whether you eat together or separately. But when you enter houses, give greetings of salam upon each other, a greeting from Allah, blessed and good. Thus does Allah make clear to you the verses of ordinance that you may understand.
Now, there's a mistake in the translation here that needs clarifying. Your own houses, that's a mistake here. As Sa'di said, this is tahsil hasil, yani you're just telling someone what they already know. Yani everyone knows they can eat in their own house. Like in your own houses here, what it means is the houses of your children or the houses of your spouses. Yani the houses that's not your house specifically, but it's from that which is part of what you is almost under your authority. Yani the houses under your authority, meaning the house of your children, your spouse, and so on. As for the blind and yani the disabled or the sick, yani there's no hardship upon them in the things they can't do, in anything they can't do. Yani for example, a blind person cannot fight in jihad, or the sick person cannot, for example, let's say go to the masjid to pray if they're extremely sick. For in anything that they can't do, there's no haraj upon them. And you're permitted to eat from the houses that are under your responsibility, that is the houses of your children and the houses of your spouses, the houses of your fathers, your mothers, your brothers, your sisters, your father's brothers, your father's sisters, your mother's brothers, your mother's sisters. Naam, the houses that your keys possess. Sa'di, he said, yani the houses that you are a guardian for, yani you have tasarruf for them. Meaning, yani for example, someone said, look after this house, and yani there's no harm for you to eat from it and to eat in it. And there is no blame upon you whether you eat together or separately. Or yani أو صديقكم, yani that there is no he said, yani this is the issue. He said, قد جرت العادة والعرف بالمسامحة في الأكل منها. Yani he said that this ayah, the purpose behind it, in this issue of which house you can eat, is that the norms are that it's okay to come and eat in that house. Yani people's norms is that you can turn up to your children's house and have a meal. That's the norms of the people. Naam. Likewise, your friends and so on. He said, so if it was the case that one of these people did not give permission, then it would not be permissible to go and eat any from there. Now, Allah Azza wa Jal tells there's nothing wrong with the fact that your customs are. So this issue is not permission. And if someone doesn't give permission, says you can't come to my house, you can't come to their house from your friends, for example. Like in here, the issue is that there's nothing wrong with the custom of the fact that you go and eat in your children's houses or you go and eat in your friends' houses. And there is no harm in you eating all together or you eating individually. But the best is to eat all together. Why? Because Allah mentioned it first here. So the better is for you to all eat together, and for you all of the people of the house to come and eat together. Like, and if you eat separately, there is nothing wrong with it. And give greetings of salam upon each other, a greeting of Allah which is blessed and good. And these are the verses which break down for you. In Suratun anzalnaha wa faradnaha, and we gave all of the rulings for you in it.
إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله وإذا كانوا معه على أمر جامع لم يذهبوا حتى يستأذنوا إن الذين يستأذنونك أولئك الذين يؤمنون بالله ورسوله فإذا استأذنوك لبعض شأنهم فأذن لمن شئت منهم واستغفر لهم الله إن الله غفور رحيم. The believers are only those who believe in Allah and His Messenger, and when they are meeting with Him for a matter of common interest, do not depart until they have asked His permission. Indeed, those who ask your permission, O Muhammad, those are the ones who believe in Allah and His Messenger. So when they ask your permission due to something of their affairs, then give permission to whom you will among them, and ask forgiveness for them of Allah, and indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful.
And the Amr Jami' here is the matters where the Muslims are required to be together, like jihad or consultation. The Prophet calls them for a public meeting. So you have to all be there. Or like jihad, you all have to be there. Lakin if the Prophet ﷺ gives permission to some of them, he said, O Messenger of Allah, would you give me permission that I have this matter to attend to? You have permission, you can go. The one that the Prophet is given the choice who you want to give permission to and who you don't want to give permission to. Now, so give permission to them and ask Allah Azza wa Jal to forgive them. And if they have some personal matters that excuses them for this from this public activity that has to be done altogether.
لا تجعلوا دعاء الرسول بينكم كدعاء بعضكم بعضا قد يعلم الله الذين يتسللون منكم لواذا فليحذر الذين يخالفون عن أمره أن تصيبهم فتنة أو يصيبهم عذاب أليم. Do not make your calling of the messenger among yourselves as the call of one of you to another. Already Allah knows those of you who slip away, concealed by others. So let those beware who dissent from His order, lest fitna strike them or a painful punishment.
When you speak to the Messenger ﷺ, don't speak to him like you speak to any other person. You don't shout "Oi," and you don't say any words like this. You speak with the utmost respect to the Prophet ﷺ and about the Prophet ﷺ. And you don't, and we're not talking about something haram in the sense the believers talk to each other. Ya Fulan, Ya Abdullah, Ya Abdullah, calls across the room, right? And that's normal. Like not with the Rasul ﷺ. With the Rasul ﷺ, with the utmost respect, you don't speak to him like you speak to the other people, and you don't speak about him like you speak to the other people. Allah knows those who slip away, then those people who used to go without asking permission, which came in the previous ayah. Without asking permission, they would just wait till the meeting is full and then just slip away. And they are not those people who ask permission, the believers who used to say, O Messenger of Allah, do you excuse me to go? Yeah? As for those who go against the order of the Prophet ﷺ in anything, they are threatened with a fitna, and the fitna is a shirk. Meaning if you do bid'ah, you go against the command of the Prophet ﷺ, the danger is that you will fall into fitna, which is either shirk or punishment, or you will fall into a severe torment. And this is a very severe warning for the one who goes against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the severity of what happens when you go against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that you will either fall into shirk or a severe punishment. And it doesn't just include shirk. Shirk and also trials and tribulations when you go against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So this ayah is from the strongest of the ayat in prohibiting bid'ah and going against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we finish with the last ayah.
ألا إن لله ما في السماوات والأرض قد يعلم ما أنتم عليه ويوم يرجعون إليه فينبئهم بما عملوا والله بكل شيء عليم. Unquestionably to Allah belongs whatever is in the heaven and earth. Already He knows that upon which you stand and knows the day when they will be returned to Him, and He will inform them what they have done, and Allah is knowing of all things.
that upon which you stand, yani whether you are a believer or a hypocrite, what's the basis for your actions? Are you a believer or a munafiq? And Allah knows the day when they will be returned to Him. Yani, let them beware of the day, Yawm al-Qiyamah, when they'll be returned to Him, and He will inform them of what they have done. That brings us to the end of Surah An-Noor. We are very behind because we were supposed to have done a few pages from Surah Al-Furqan and then started another juz. So we are like a juz and we're like a lot behind. We're at least a good, a juz behind. Like, inshallah, we'll catch it up if Allah Azza wa Jal makes it easy for us. It's now time for our iftar, so we have to stop there. That's what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy to mention. Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.